Welcome to Listen Audiobooks, your free audiobook. I'm your host. Today, we're exploring Radical Self-Focus Changes Everything. This audiobook will transform how you think about this subject. Let's dive in. There is a moment, and I suspect you know exactly the one I'm talking about, when you look up from your life and realize you have been living it for everyone except yourself. Maybe it happened in the middle of a conversation you didn't want to be having. Maybe it happened at 2 in the morning when the house was quiet and the weight of everything you've been carrying finally settled across your chest like something physical, something real. Maybe it happened so gradually you can barely name the moment at all. You just woke up one day and felt the distance between who you are and who you were supposed to become. And that distance felt like a country you'd never be able to cross. You have spent years being remarkable for other people. You have shown up. You have given your time, your energy, your patience, your best thinking, your quietest hours, and your loudest efforts to jobs and relationships and obligations that asked everything of you without ever once asking how you were doing. You have bent yourself into shapes that had nothing to do with your actual form, and somewhere in all of that bending, you lost the thread back to yourself. Here's what nobody tells you. The world is very good at making you believe that your constant availability is a virtue, that sacrifice is the same thing as love, that putting yourself last is the mark of a generous spirit. The world rewards your self-abandonment and calls it maturity. It calls it teamwork. It calls it humility. And you, because you are thoughtful and decent, and you genuinely care about the people around you, believed it. You accepted the trade. You gave yourself away in pieces and told yourself it was the right thing to do. But there is a cost. There is always a cost. And what it costs you is not just your energy or your time or your peace of mind, though it costs you those things too. What it costs you is your direction, your clarity, your sense of what you actually want from this one life you have been given. You stop asking the important questions because you're too busy answering everyone else's. This audiobook is about reclaiming something you never should have surrendered. It is about the radical, sometimes uncomfortable, ultimately transformative act of turning your full attention back toward yourself. Not selfishness, not isolation, not the kind of self-absorption that makes you small and brittle and blind to the people you love. I'm talking about something far more powerful and far more courageous than any of that. I'm talking about becoming the central figure in your own story again. What you're about to discover is that when you stop fragmenting yourself across every demand and expectation that isn't truly yours, something extraordinary begins to happen, not just to you, to everything around you. The focus changes, the life changes, and it starts right here, right now, with a single decision to finally, honestly, unapologetically begin with yourself. Chapter 1. Expose the hidden cost of constantly prioritizing others over yourself and why most people are exhausted, unfulfilled, and stuck, because they have never been taught that self-focus is not selfishness, but survival. You are tired. Not the kind of tired that a good night of sleep fixes. This is the kind of tired that lives in your bones, the kind that follows you into the morning before you've even opened your eyes. And if you're honest with yourself right now, you've been this tired for a long time. Here's what nobody told you. The exhaustion you're carrying isn't bad luck. It isn't your circumstances. It isn't even the hard season you keep waiting to pass. It is the direct and predictable result of a pattern you were taught so early, so quietly, and so thoroughly that it never once occurred to you to question it. The pattern is this: you put everyone else first. Every single time. You answer the message when you're already depleted. You say yes when your body is screaming no. You shrink your needs down to something small enough to apologize for, and then you apologize anyway. You have poured yourself into jobs, relationships, families, friendships, and causes. And somewhere along the way, you stopped asking the one question that might have changed everything. What about me? Not in a bitter way, not in an accusatory way, just honestly. What about me? The world never encouraged you to ask that. In fact, the world actively discouraged it. You were handed a story very early, and the story went something like this. Good people give. Selfless people are the ones worth admiring. Putting yourself first is something small people do. Shallow people, people who lack character. So, you internalized that story. You wore it like a badge. You became the reliable one, the dependable one, the one who shows up, the one who stays. And maybe that even felt good for a while. But then the returns stopped coming in. The people you poured into didn't pour back. The sacrifices you made didn't lead to the fulfillment you expected. You kept waiting for the moment when all that giving would fill you back up. And that moment just never came. Because that's not how depletion works. You cannot pour your way to fullness. What's happening inside you right now, that low hum of resentment, that vague but persistent sense that something is wrong, that feeling of being present in your life but somehow missing from it, that is not weakness. That is a signal. Your whole self is telling you that the equation you've been living inside of is broken. And here is what I want you to understand before we go any further. Focusing on yourself is not selfishness. It is not indulgence. It is not vanity or narcissism or any of the other words that were weaponized to keep you manageable and available and endlessly useful to everyone around you. Self-focus is survival. It is the most honest act of stewardship you can commit to. Because you are not a resource. You are a person. The cost of never having learned this is not abstract. You can feel it. In your body. In your relationships. In the half-finished dreams you've quietly stopped mentioning. In the version of yourself you barely remember. That version isn't gone. But getting back to it requires something most people aren't willing to do. It requires choosing yourself fully and without apology, possibly for the very first time. That choice starts right now. Chapter 2. Reframe radical self-focus as a revolutionary act of responsibility, showing how investing deeply in your own clarity, energy, and growth is the foundation that makes you genuinely useful to everyone and everything around you. Here's the thing nobody warns you about when you start taking yourself seriously. People will notice. And not always in the way you hope. Some will call it selfish. Some will pull back. Some will frame your boundaries and your rest and your intentional growth as a kind of abandonment. And for a while, that noise can be loud enough to make you second-guess everything. But I want you to sit with this idea for a moment. What if radical self-focus isn't a retreat from responsibility? What if it is responsibility, taken all the way to its root? Think about what actually happens when you neglect yourself. Your energy gets thin. Your patience shortens into something brittle. Your decisions start coming from exhaustion or fear instead of clarity. You show up for the people in your life, but you're showing up half-assembled, running on obligation rather than genuine presence. You know this feeling. Most people do. And here's what's quietly devastating about it. You can be surrounded by people who need you and still feel like you have nothing real to give them. That's not noble. That's erosion. Now consider the alternative. When you invest in your own clarity, when you actually take the time to understand what you value, what drains you, what energizes you, what you need to function at your best, something shifts. The quality of your presence changes. You stop reacting and start responding. You stop performing care and start embodying it. The people around you don't just get more of you. They get a version of you that is actually whole. This is the revolution hiding inside radical self-focus. It's not about turning inward and closing the door. It's about doing the interior work so that when the door opens, something real walks out. Every ounce of energy you spend resenting where you are, suppressing what you feel, or running from the parts of yourself you haven't examined, that's energy that doesn't go to the people you love, doesn't go to the work that matters to you, doesn't go to the world you say you want to help build. Self-neglect is not generosity. It just looks like it from certain angles. You are the infrastructure of your own contribution. Let that land. Because if the infrastructure is crumbling, it doesn't matter how motivated or well-intentioned you are. The output suffers, and people who depend on that output, whether that's your children, your colleagues, your community, even the strangers your work eventually touches, they feel that gap, even if they can't name it. So when you make the choice to sleep enough, to think clearly, to honor your limits, to pursue the kind of growth that makes you more fully yourself, you are not being indulgent. You are being a good steward of something that matters. You are maintaining the one resource that everything else in your life flows through. This reframe matters because the guilt that can come with self-investment is real. It can feel like selfishness dressed up in self-help language, but guilt is only useful when it points toward genuine harm. And taking yourself seriously harms no one. It actually does the opposite. The most useful version of you has been inside all along. You just have to be willing to build the conditions where they can show up. Chapter 3. Introduce the core principles of radical self-focus, including ruthless self-honesty, protecting your attention, auditing your relationships, and aligning daily decisions with your own values rather than external expectations. So, now that you understand why most people never change, why they stay stuck in patterns that quietly drain them, let's talk about what actually moves the needle. Because radical self-focus isn't a mood or a mindset hack. It's a set of principles you live by. And once you really grasp them, you'll start seeing your whole life differently. The first principle is ruthless self-honesty. Not the polite kind. Not the kind where you journal a little, feel slightly better, and close the notebook. Real self-honesty means looking at your life as if you were a stranger seeing it for the first time. What would that stranger notice? Where would they wince? You already know the answers. The relationship that takes more than it gives. The career path you chose because it impressed your parents. The version of yourself you perform for other people. Ruthless self-honesty means you stop pretending those things aren't there. It's uncomfortable. Good. Discomfort is information. It's your life pointing at something that needs your attention. The second principle is protecting your attention like it's your most valuable resource, because it is. Your attention is the currency of your life. Wherever it goes, that's where your energy goes, your time goes, your identity slowly forms. And right now, most people are letting that currency bleed out in 100 different directions. Social media, other people's drama, news cycles designed to keep you anxious and scrolling. Every time you give your attention away carelessly, you're making a decision about who you're becoming. Radical self-focus means you start making that decision consciously. You get deliberate. You get almost protective, the way you'd protect something irreplaceable, because that's exactly what it is. Third, you need to audit your relationships. This one tends to make people uncomfortable, and that's okay. You don't have to cut anyone off dramatically. But you do need to get honest about who in your life is pulling you toward growth and who is quietly pulling you back toward smallness. Some people need you to stay the same so they don't have to feel bad about staying the same themselves. They're not villains. They're just not your allies in the work you're doing now. You get to choose how much access different people have to your time, your thoughts, and your energy. That's not selfishness. That's stewardship. And the fourth principle ties all of it together. It's about aligning your daily decisions with your own values. Not the values you inherited, not the ones you absorbed from people trying to manage you, but the ones that actually resonate when you're quiet and still and honest. The problem is, most people don't even know what their own values are, because they've never taken the time to ask. They just react. They just accommodate. They just do what seems expected. And slowly, year by year, they drift further from the life they actually wanted. Here's what changes when you start living from your own values. The noise gets quieter. The decisions get easier. You stop waking up exhausted by other people's agendas. You start feeling like the author of your own life, rather than a supporting character in everyone else's story. That shift is available to you, right now. It starts with these 4 principles, and it starts with you deciding that you are finally worth the effort. Chapter 4. Provide practical tools and daily rituals for implementing radical self-focus in real life, including how to set non-negotiable boundaries, reclaim your time, silence the inner critic, and build momentum through small, consistent acts of self-prioritization. So now you know the why. Let's talk about the how. The first thing you need to understand is that radical self-focus doesn't happen in grand gestures. It happens in the quiet, unglamorous decisions you make before anyone else is watching. It happens at 6 in the morning when you choose 10 minutes of stillness over scrolling. It happens when someone asks you to take on one more thing and you pause, genuinely pause, before answering. That pause is where your power lives. Let's start with boundaries, because this word gets thrown around so casually that it's almost lost its meaning. A boundary isn't a wall you build to keep people out. It's a line you draw to keep yourself in, present, intact, and functioning at the level you deserve to function at. And here's what makes a boundary real. It has a consequence you're actually willing to enforce. If you say you don't answer work emails after 7, and then you answer them anyway, that's not a boundary. That's a suggestion. Non-negotiable means exactly that. Nothing negotiates with it. Start small. Pick one boundary this week. Just one. Maybe it's protecting your first 30 minutes in the morning. Maybe it's not volunteering information about your schedule to people who drain you. Choose something specific, hold it once, and notice how that single act of self-respect begins to rewrite the story you've been telling yourself about what you're worth. Now let's talk about time, because time is the most honest mirror you own. Where your hours go is where your values actually live, not where you say they live, but where they actually live. Look at yesterday. Genuinely look at it. How many of those hours belong to you? Not to obligation, not to someone else's urgency, to you. If the answer is uncomfortable, that discomfort is important. Don't look away from it. Reclaiming your time doesn't require a complete life overhaul. It requires 15 minutes. 15 protected, deliberate minutes every single day that you dedicate to something that feeds you. Reading, walking, thinking without a phone in your hand. Over 30 days, that's 7.5 hours of you showing up for yourself. That compounds. Everything compounds. And then there's that voice. You know the one. The one that says you're being selfish, that you haven't earned rest, that other people need you more than you need yourself. That voice isn't wisdom. It's conditioning. It learned its lines from years of you putting yourself last, and it will keep reciting them until you stop rewarding it with your attention. You silence it the same way you silence anything, not by arguing, but by acting. Every time you follow through on a self-prioritizing choice, the voice gets a little quieter. Not all at once, gradually, but the momentum you build through small, consistent action becomes evidence. Real, lived evidence that you can trust yourself. And once you start trusting yourself, the inner critic loses its authority over you. Here's what I want you to walk away with today. You don't need a perfect system. You need a next right move, one boundary, 15 minutes, one moment where you choose yourself instead of defaulting to everyone else. Do that today, then do it again tomorrow. That's how everything changes. Chapter 5. Issue a bold call to action that challenges listeners to make the immediate decision to put themselves first, reminding them that the life they want is waiting on the other side of the courage to finally choose themselves without apology. So here we are. At the edge of everything you've been circling for longer than you want to admit. You've heard the ideas. You've felt the pull. And somewhere inside you, something has already shifted, even if just a little, because you don't pick up something like this unless a part of you is ready. A part of you already knows that the way you've been living, the way you've been shrinking, the way you've been placing everyone else's comfort above your own peace, that it isn't working. It hasn't been working for a while now, and the only thing left is the decision. Not a plan, not a perfect roadmap, not the right moment when all the conditions finally line up. Just a decision. The kind you make in your chest before your mind catches up. Here's what I want you to understand before we part ways today. The life you actually want, the one with space in it, with joy that isn't borrowed, with energy you haven't quietly rationed out to everyone but yourself. That life is not somewhere far off in the distance. It is not waiting on some future version of you who finally has it all figured out. It is waiting on the other side of one honest, courageous, unapologetic choice. The choice to say, I matter. Not more than everyone else, but absolutely not less. That's it. That's the whole thing. Radical self-focus was never about becoming someone cold or selfish or unreachable. It was always about becoming someone whole, someone who shows up fully, to their work, their relationships, their own mirror, because they stopped bleeding themselves dry for the approval of people who were never keeping score anyway. You've been waiting for permission. Stop waiting. No one is coming to hand it to you on a Thursday afternoon and say, now it's your turn. You have to take the turn. You have to look at your own life with the same generosity, the same fierce loyalty, the same willingness to fight for it, that you've given to everyone else without a second thought. That energy exists in you. You've proven that over and over again. Now it's time to aim some of it at yourself. So make the decision today. Not tomorrow, not after the next hard thing passes. Today. Decide that from this moment forward, your needs are not an afterthought. Your dreams are not a luxury. Your rest, your growth, your boundaries, your becoming, none of it is negotiable anymore. Let that land, and then let it move you. Because movement is what this has always been about. Not perfection, not a flawless transformation you perform for an audience. Just honest, steady, courageous movement toward the person you already are underneath all the years of putting yourself last. That person is still in there. Waiting, not with frustration, not with judgment, but with extraordinary patience, ready the moment you finally turn and say, okay, I choose me. The life you want is real. It belongs to you, and it has been yours to claim all along. Now go claim it. Thank you for listening to Listen Audiobooks. I'm your host. If this resonated with you, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. See you for the next episode.